at you from Arizona, basically the home state and hometown of David Benavidez. And David Benavidez is taking on David Lemieux. This is a really good fight there at 168.
That's right. I mean, look, obviously, David's angling for one of the big fights, a super fight in the division. This is the next best thing. Two of the biggest punchers in that division. That's one where, I think the ref, can just take a coffee break for that fight. You know what those guys are going to do. There's not going to be a lot of movement. There's not going to be a lot of dancing. They're going to slug it out in the middle of the ring. And there on the undercard, again, we're highlighting another young prospect, Yoel Gomez, a Cuban 154-pounder, 5-0, 5 KOs, some highlight reel knockouts as part of that, taking on the veteran Jorge Cota. And that will be an all-action card. That's the goal there.
And the interesting thing, I think, with Benavidez and Lemieux, especially with all the chatter that's going on surrounding Caleb Plant and Andre Durrell, it looks like that fight is basically going to be made, and maybe the winners of Durrell Plant, it seems, will finally be facing Benavidez Lemieux.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the possibilities. I mean, look, as soon as we announce this one, we're on to August, September, October, November.
Yeah.
So, the reality is, we want to stay well ahead of the schedule and be able to start looking even further beyond July.
That's fantastic. Okay, so then the following week on May 28th, Showtime pay-per-view. And I love this because we finally get to go to New York, Barclays Center, Brooklyn, New York, and it is the return of Gervonta Tank Davis. And he's taking on Rolly Romero. And look, this was a fight that was supposed to happen in the past, but these guys are going to finally get it on. By the way, this is going to be the first fight back at Barclays Center since March of 2020. It's been a long time since the Barclays Center has had some boxing. And not only you got Tank in New York, but this is the place where he won his first world title. Remember that Jose Pedraza fight that we
Right. That was certainly a memorable fight. He was on the undercard there. On a really great card. I think it was a Charlo headline fight, which, in retrospect, you look back and you had Charlo and Tank on the same card at Barclays Center, phenomenal card. And, coming back and headlining, we're thrilled to be back at Barclays Center. They're one of the strongest supporters of Showtime Boxing over the last 5-6 years. And I couldn't think of a better place for a fight like that.
So then the following week, we get to June. It's Showtime Championship Boxing coming right back at you, and right back to Minneapolis, the Armory. And we get Stephen Fulton Jr., the unified champion, and he's taking on Danny Roman. Danny Roman has been begging for a big-time fight. He's the former unified champ. He's done nothing but win since he suffered that one loss. And now, all of a sudden, he gets in with the current unified champ, it's Stephen Fulton Jr.
Right, and here we go again. Evenly matched fights between top-tier fighters. And it doesn't get better. That's one of, if you had to pick 2 or 3 favorites on this, at least for me personally, it's tough because there's so many good fights. But when you look at certain ones, you're like, there's just no way that this isn't an exciting fight. And this is one of those. With the style matchup between Fulton and Roman, the skill level of those two guys, 2 belts on the line, there's no way that that's not a Fight of the Year candidate.
And then a couple of weeks later in June, Showtime Championship Boxing comes your way from Houston, Texas, the Toyota Center. And on Juneteenth, by the way, which is something that Jermall Charlo started doing just last year, said he wanted to continue to do that, make it an annual thing to fight on Juneteenth, which is obviously very big there in Texas. He has his fight, Masij Sulecki. So talk to me about this fight, Charlo defending his title at 160.
Yeah, the reality is, there's been a lot of discussion. I'm sure there'll be some questions when we get to the media portion of this about, Charlo's journey to this fight, and happy to discuss those. But the reality is, when a super fight like a Canelo versus Charlo fight falls apart, you just have to regroup, move to the next best thing, whether it's, it's going to be Munguia or in this case, Sulecki. Sulecki is a proven contender, a veteran, only 2 losses to 2 of the best guys in the division, in Danny Jacobs and Billy Joe Saunders. So, this is, I know everybody wanted Canelo Charlo, and, I still want that too. I know Jermall, more than anybody, wants that fight. But this is a really good alternative here, and a quality test there in Houston.
Before we move on, let me ask you about Munguia, because it seemed as if then Charlo Munguia was going to happen. Do you think Munguia and his team wanted that fight?
I have no doubt that Munguia wants a fight. First of all, I would never question the heart of a fighter, and certainly someone as accomplished as Munguia. But Munguia had a deal. He reached agreement. He had accepted the terms of the fight. So I have no doubt, he negotiated out, accepted it, said, okay, I'm willing to participate in this fight in these terms. So for us, his part was done. He accepted the fight. Things broke down over networks and Munguia's promoters request that we bring in another platform to collaborate with. We can get into some of the details on that, but the reality, it just didn't make sense. We tried to make some concessions, alternating, we get the fight and, Munguia's network can get the rematch. Ultimately, that never got anywhere, and we weren't able to reach agreement. So we've got to move on and get Jamal the best available fight after that.
And I think sometimes that's sad that sometimes in this sport the promoters, when they get involved, things go left. So we go to July, and we're in the heart of the summer, and we're in a great fighting city of San Antonio, Texas. And Mark Mexia, who we saw dethrone Gary Russell Jr. and take that featherweight title, the WBC featherweight title, gets his first title defense against the unbeaten Ray Vargas.
Another one, I'd hate to keep going back to the well, but evenly matched fights among top-tier fighters. Mexia, brand new titleist, Ray Vargas, established veteran. I don't know how that fight's going to go. It's a 50-50 fight, and that's what we set out to do, and I think we, without patting ourselves on the back too much, I think we achieved that. Top fighters fighting top fighters.
Yeah, this is fantastic. I mean, you look at this here, and we've laid out here over the next basically, few months here, a number of high-stakes, meaningful fights. I know there are people have umpteen questions.
Kurt, go ahead.
Thank you for your time. You guys showed the return of Errol Spence to Showtime. Is there any potential for another longtime staple with Deontay Wilder returning to Showtime?
Certainly hope so. I know Deontay was disappointed in that last, the outcome of the last fight. I think he's got nothing to be disappointed about at all. He fought a tremendous fight. I mean, one of the most exciting fights of the year, and a lot of heart displayed by both fighters. So I'm looking forward to having him back. Whenever he's ready to come back, I think he's still got a lot of mileage. I think there are still some mega fights out there for him. So, for my money, Deontay can't come back soon enough. He's fought 12 or 13 times on the network. We'd love to have him back. So, whenever he's ready, I'd love to engage.